all sides of this argument, and that's why we're talking to Andrew Pendleton now. He's Deputy Chief Executive and Director of Strategy and Advocacy at Global Action Plan. I also want to talk to Alan Miller, who is an anti-ULEZ campaigner. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for giving up your time this afternoon and chatting to us about this.
Hi, Peter.
Alan, maybe I can start with you. This landmark decision, says Sadiq Khan, is good news as it means we can proceed with cleaning up the air in outer London from the 29th of August. The decision to expand the ULEZ was very difficult, not something I took lightly, and I continue to do everything possible to address any concerns Londoners may have. What do you make of what Sadiq Khan has said today in this High Court judgment?
Well, the problem with giving judges the power to do something that's about political is that's exactly the problem. So this was a decision based on very specific legal questions that were called out, not on the moral or political question. The political question of whether to expand ULEZ, which a majority of people in the actual consultation said they did not want, which he ignored and went ahead with the ANPR cameras anyway. And now who people across the outer boroughs and outside London are all saying they do not want it. 50% of vans outside London are not compliant. It's got nothing to do with air quality. He has consistently actually lied about 4,000 people dying. It said nothing about that in the Imperial report. They said don't extrapolate that. We know the underground does have these things. We know if he is serious about improving lives, that's about building houses, about people getting paid better, none of which happens if you expand ULEZ because you charge working people more. It's why his colleagues in the Labour Party and the leader have intervened, because they've seen the fury in Uxbridge and South Ruislip. So he's saying you can carry on doing this thing that I'm saying is bad, but you just have to pay for it. It's completely contradictory. It's an unnecessary, unjustified, unacceptable, undemocratic imposition. And judges do not rule on democracy. They rule on technical points of law.
He is nonetheless, Alan, the democratically elected leader of London. He is the mayor of London. He has a mandate.
He's the democratically elected mayor of London. He does not have a mandate to expand ULEZ. That was never agreed. If he thinks he wants to have that, let him have a referendum. We're encouraging everyone now to carry on doing what they're doing, which is to notify their MPs and councillors, to say to them they'll be voting on the basis of what they do, to do the same thing we've done where we encourage Mark Harper to step away from active travel in Liverpool streets and stop funding, which they've done. We've seen the discussions now about net zero and how it underpins all these measures that are imposed. And actually, it's about him raising £500 million, right? Let's be very clear. He's also said he needs that. But the way he's doing it is unjustified and undemocratic. He's ignored the consultation process and people are furious, and we're going to keep fighting and challenging this together.
Andrew Pendleton, this is not democratic, Alan says. He says it's not something which is desirable. He says it's something against the wishes of Londoners. Why do you think it should go ahead?
Because the health effects of air pollution are really dire. And the more we understand about the impact of air pollution on our health, the worse it gets.
Well, we've been given false information from Sadiq Khan, 4,000 people dying every year from air pollution. He says the ULEZ has already reduced toxic nitrogen dioxide air pollution by nearly half in central London and a fifth in inner London. Is that correct, and where do those statistics come from?
It's correct. The inner London ULEZ has been successful in both reducing air pollution and also changing behaviour to a certain extent. So more people are walking and cycling and using public transport as well. But the most important thing to note, so if you, for instance, go to a paediatric A&E department on a day when the air pollution is particularly bad in London, where the high air pressure traps the air into the basin of the Thames Valley, you will see a much greater number. Talk to any a paediatric A&E doctor, you will see a much greater number of children with really severe asthma. The 4,000 figure for early deaths comes from Imperial College. It's extremely robust and peer-reviewed piece of research.
The
thing about air pollution, if I could just finish the point,
sure.
The thing about air pollution is that it affects all of us for all of our lives, every organ in our body, and it's a particular problem in outer London now because there isn't the ULEZ there, and outer London tends to have a slightly older population, and as we get older, and I'm in my late 50s now, so this is on my mind, you get more prone to the effects of air pollution because you have other health problems such as heart problems or a tendency towards stroke, which air pollution can exacerbate. So it's really urgent. The health effects are dire. The more we know, the worse it gets. And so obviously at Global Action Plan, we're pleased that the judge has ruled in favour of getting on with it.
But surely, just before I go back to Alan, surely that if Sadiq Khan really properly cared about air quality and air pollution, he'd clean up the tube in London. Surely that would be the priority rather than only 1 in 10 cars in a certain bit of London.
We have to do what we can where we can. So vehicles are responsible for about half the air pollution in London outside. The tube is a problem and that needs dealing with, but it's a different sort of problem and requires different responses. But I think the mayor is behaving responsibly in terms of his obligation to look after public health. This is a major... Air pollution is the biggest single environmental public health challenge we have now that smoking has declined.
OK, Alan, Andrew says the mayor is acting responsibly when it comes to public health. That's the priority here.
You see how these things work, right? Utter incomprehension and not having read the report, obviously, because Imperial College's report and the people involved in it say do not extrapolate from this any numbers. So what we have is misinformation perpetrated and then re-promoted as a PR fear spin. It's got nothing to do with health. It's got to do with he wants to raise money because he's in a battle. Now, the battle between the Labour mayor and the Conservatives should get resolved. We're the ones who are suffering as a consequence. However, he's using completely disingenuous arguments. They keep changing. Then here Starmer started saying about lung cancer. Our air has never been better in London. Over the last 4 decades, it's improved astronomically. Car engines have been transformed. If you take readings around London, it just defies any of these arguments. And then he's saying you can still do it anyway, but you just have to pay for it. It does not make any logical sense at all. It's fear-mongering and misinformation to try and drive this around children and old people and deaths. People see it for what it is. The good thing is that the public knows when they're having these things presented in this way. That's why what happened in Ruislip did. That's why people are going to keep challenging things. You should get involved with togetherdeclaration.org. The Stop ULEZ Coalition is going to continue. We're not going to rely on judges and technical legal issues. We are going to get the public to keep having their voices heard democratically. We're going to force the issue together.
I want to bring Andrew back in. What do you make of what Alan has said there, Andrew?
Well, one of the things I'd really like to appeal to everybody watching this to do, if you're concerned about the cost and you're concerned about your vehicle, is first and foremost go on the Transport for London website, put in find the checker where you can put in your registration number, and it will tell you whether your vehicle is compliant or not. Because I do think there's an enormous amount of misinformation, and if it's scaremongering that we're talking about, then I feel like there's been a lot of scaremongering around who will face a cost and who will not. You only face a charge if you have a non-compliant vehicle and if you use it.
But with respect, Andrew, sorry, just let me just make one brief point on your point, and then I promise I'll let you talk. Andrew, the kind of vehicles that are not going to be compliant, the 1 in 10, are often older vehicles. They're often vehicles they're often vans. They're often people who really need their vehicle for work, are they not?
If you're a sole trader, you get access to the scrappage scheme. I believe the mayor has extended the scheme today.
£2,000 doesn't buy you very much in a van now, does it?
To people who want up to 5, I think, for a van. But and if you go on the website of Transport for London, that's where you'll find all the information you need. Now, I'm not saying that this is not going to be a problem for some people. It is, which is why I think it would be a lot more helpful if there was a good, positive political discussion around how we deal with that. And actually, to be honest, the wider cost of living crisis. And let's not hang everything around the neck of the ULEZ. We need the ULEZ to protect public health, particularly the health of our children. I have a teenage son, 14-year-old son. I worry a lot about his health, breathing toxic air in London. We need to deal with the public health crisis, but we also need to make sure that we give people the support they need through the cost of living crisis, of course.
I mean, you're not giving people too much support during the cost of living crisis if you're charging them £12.50 to leave their driveway in the car that they can barely afford to run. The petrol prices are very high at the moment. I mean, there's a lot to this, isn't there, Alan Miller?
But it's not just 1 in 10, is it? Because we saw from the figures when we actually had a freedom of information and a proper scoping of it, that was a different number, and he apologised. And you see, we keep getting these stats and people that keep saying the science, my children and the old people, right? And what we're saying is democratically, people said they did not want it in London. What we're saying is it's unjustified. It makes no logical sense. It's an imposition that's just about raising money. The air is cleaner than it's ever been before. We can all have a discussion about innovation, but the way you lengthen lives and make people's lives better is you build good houses and you improve their incomes. In a cost of living, cost of lockdown crisis that many of these people cheered and supported, that's what the Mayor of London and any mayor should be focused on. And frankly, like, we're going to encourage everyone, and I'd encourage all your viewers not to passively look at the TfL site in defeat, but to say, get in touch with your MPs and your councillors, let them know what you're going to do and you're going to vote. Have your voices heard. Don't just complain on social media. Get involved with us. We can win this. We've just seen Canterbury do a U-turn on their attempt to put the whole of the area into zones. Warrington have taken out things that have been imposed and road closures. This is a time now for us to have our voices heard, because Labour's not going to want to lose the elections in London. When their MPs start saying we've had a furious tsunami, the Conservatives are not going to want to lose. We can make our voices heard and challenge this together. I'd encourage everyone to get involved. OK,
final word to Andrew Pendleton on this, please.
I just hope this is a moment with the judge ruling today in favour of the Mayor when different political parties and factions come together and try and make the ULEZ work as well as it can for all of Londoners, because unhealthy air is in nobody's interests, and so we need to deal with that first and foremost. And really using ULEZ as a political football creates a massive problem that doesn't need to exist. Let's get on and do it now and make it work for people.
I fear there may be people who disagree with you, Andrew, but thank you so much for your time. Andrew Pendleton there is Deputy Chief Executive and Director of Strategy and Advocacy at the Global Action Plan, and Alan Miller, who's an anti-ULEZ campaigner.